So who are you?
Hey Robert, my name is Abheek Anand and I am the product manager for the engineered cloud products, and that includes our product which is with our partnership with Amazon called Engineered App Cloud, and the recently launched Engineered X Cloud product which is with our partnership with Termark.
Very cool. Disclaimer right now, Building 43, is owned and operated by Rackspace, and you're using a competitor, but that's part of this whole shtick. We want to get around to the whole marketplace, not just cover ourselves and figure out what's going on in the web world, right? And who are you?
Tom Mornini, CTO and founder of Engineered. I have a pretty significant background. I started programming in 1979. So it's kind of spooky to think how long I've been doing that now. I don't program much anymore, but now I just help guide Engineered.
Yeah. You're in the middle of San Francisco, right in the middle of all the cool kids, basically in the neighborhood. The Twitter's down the street, and there's all sorts of interesting startups within a couple miles of your offices. What's been happening here in San Francisco since you started 5 years ago?
It's been really exciting. So we were founded in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And the data centers that we put our first servers in were there, and then New Jersey, and then it was not stated as a requirement, but it was stated as a highly encouraged by our VC firm Benchmark that we come down here so we could attract more talent.
Yeah.
And what I really like seeing down here now is when we're out at lunch, you hear people talking Rails, you hear people talking tech, you hear people talking all modern things. That's one of the things I really love being down here about, is that I'm not the one. In Sacramento, there's nobody to listen in on.
Yeah.
Or very few. And what's neat here is I think half the conversation usually revolves around business now. Whereas in the 90s it was just tech.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm noticing the same things but that's why I love living here. Every conversation around you is something about a modern thing.
Ding.
Business is starting up right next to you. It's really crazy. And so Rackspace is a hosting company. Is Engineered a hosting company? Are we competitors still? Or
I think we kind of used to be, and I think we probably compete for some customers in different segments, but I can't wait for Rackspace to be a vendor of Engineereds the way Amazon and Terramark are today.
Yeah.
If I could snap my fingers and make it happen, it would have happened a year ago. So
explain what you mean by vendor, because
Sure.
your business is now shifting from, you keep saying you're not a hosting company anymore and you're doing something else. Explain what you mean by that.
Right. So what we do is we provide the platform layer for Ruby on Rails, and we specifically intend to allow our customers to choose their infrastructure provider. We see ourselves as entirely independent of that. It's like we want our customers to be able to write a Rails application and know perfectly well that they can effectively arbitrage the infrastructure vendors against each other.
Yeah.
And first that'll start by probably deploying your application to one or the other. And then we'd like to take it to the point where customers can deploy different portions of their applications where it makes sense.
That's really interesting.
CPU's cheap here, and memory's cheap there, and disk is cheap there, and
well, that's really interesting. Do you see a day when you can deploy on all sorts of different vendors, and that way if one of them's down for half an hour, like has happened to all of us in this space, that it switches over to the other vendor automatically? Or
yeah, I think that before probably we get to that point, I think we'll figure that out over time, but certainly taking advantage of Amazon's availability zones, and Terramark has multiple data centers and that sort of thing to distribute an application around across a very low latency network is probably the first step toward that, as opposed to multi-vendor resiliency, but we'll get there.
Yeah. When even Amazon goes down, and it goes down sometimes company-wide, right, for whatever reason.
We've not seen that.
Oh, really?
Actually, I don't.
I've seen people go down, and Amazon sometimes, or not Amazon, but hell, Rackspace was down for a little while. WordPress.com.
Just one of your data centers.
Just one of them. That's true, not company-wide. Right. It was only 10% of our customers, but it seems company-wide when you're the one down, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, one customer down is a disaster, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And people have asked me about that. Could we build a cloud-based system that uses both Amazon and Rackspace and Microsoft and go back and forth?
Don't bother, we'll take care of it for you.
Ruby on Rails. So you're almost wholly focused on Ruby on Rails developers, right? So if you're building a PHP or some other system, you're really not going to be interested in Engineered, or?
Well, it depends on how much of your system is that and how much of it is Rails. It's kind of, from in our little bubble here, it seems like everybody uses Rails, but of course that's not the case. More and more, it seems like that's true. And it's funny because I've been telling people for 4 years, they say, okay, well, I'm building a Rails application, but I have a WordPress blog in PHP that I want to host. And I'm like, well, URLs don't define physical locations. Like, there's no problem hosting the blog somewhere else and tying it in via URL space. So, we are 100% focused on Ruby on Rails developers and their needs.
Yeah. And what does that mean to the Ruby on Rails developer? What do they get? Better tools, better deployment, better reliability? What?
We're not familiar with many other environments that allow you to come in, sign up, run a credit card, and deploy your application in 3 minutes with multiple components all configured together. That could be a single server, a cluster of servers, adding servers in and out, the whole thing. I mean, like, we know the common pieces of functionality that customers use, and we manage all of those kind of key core secondary components outside of the Rails stack itself, for things like Memcache and MySQL and that sort of thing. And we have 40 support people around the world that have for 4 years been entirely focusing on the needs of Rails developers, so they understand MySQL access patterns, not in a general way, but the way Rails apps behave inside MySQL and that sort of thing. So, I was mentioning, it's just the world gets ever more specialized. In 1978, I was a computer programmer, and today I find myself on this little, growing, fortunately, but limb of a gigantic tree that is computer programming, where I'm now a Ruby on Rails cloud application deployment specialist. Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how the more you focus on something, the more complex it gets, and the more value you can bring once you stay focused.
Do you help with different architectures that are evolving, like Memcached and Cassandra and other ways that companies are having to deal with the scale problems that they're hitting? And either one of you?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a lot of our customers come to us, and they typically fall into one of two categories. The first category is sort of the advanced customer who knows what they want, and they'll come to us and they'll be like, this is exactly what I want, can you do this for us? But we're seeing that very rapidly. We're seeing a growth in a separate segment, which is a class of customers that comes to us and says, hey, here's our problem. We don't know what the best solution is. We think there's one of these 3 solutions that might fit. What do you recommend for us? And what we've done over the course of the last 4 years is build this stack and build this expertise around the stack that lets us answer that question for them.
Interesting.
And so we can pick the components that they need, curate it for them, give it to them in a manner that they don't have to worry about whether that thing actually works, whether it's up to date, whether all the patches are there, whether all the performance tuning is done.
Is this a good release, right?
Yeah, so that's sort of a big part of the value add that our customers see that we add for them.
And we allow our customers to customize the solution. So if they want to use something outside of the box, they can install it. We don't support it, which doesn't mean we won't help them in any way, shape, or form, but it's not part of what we do. But we give them the tools to install it so that we can kind of take a peek. I mean, one, it makes them happy and write a check to us, which is always a good thing. But the second thing is we get to see the patterns evolving over time and say, wow, like the Rails community is rapidly switching from Subversion to Git. Like, we need to get onto the Git bandwagon fast. Similarly, with various components pop up over time, and we say, wow, that needs to become part of the supported stack because pretty much everybody's using it now.
Yeah. What are you seeing happen in the world? By being here in San Francisco and being so focused on Ruby and Rails, what's adoption like? What are you noticing happening in the Ruby, community?
So I think growth is ferocious right now. I think our customer count growth is somewhere about 15% a month, and what I see is just so many apps. Like just an unimaginable number of apps at we have a big partner program now with over 100 partners that are development shops developing, because people call us now, and this just cracks me up that we could possibly have this large a footprint, but people call our sales line and say, I'm building a Rails app, I'm building an app, I think Rails is a good fit, but I don't know anybody who does it, can you help me? Right? It's like the actual app owners that want to use Rails for reasons that I don't even know how they ran into it, call us and say, I need help and I need developers, and developers are really scarce. I was joking the other day and I said, I think it's impossible to be unemployed if you know Rails right now.
Yeah. Or Objective-C.
Or
both.
Yeah, that's
A
actually something
ton
that
of
we've
growth
seen
in
a
mobile.
lot of, right? People sort of building the mobile apps and they need a backend for that, and Rails is a perfect backend for a lot of these kinds of applications.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we're seeing is a shift from people sort of developing, traditional web apps to more backends for mobile apps or social apps, and frankly also a growth in the enterprise side of things. It's kind of exciting to be in this part of the world right now.
Oh yeah, I get the same kinds of calls. It's to the point where I think Building 43 should turn into a jobs board, because people are like, I need Objective-C programmers or Ruby on Rails programmers and scalability experts because my website's going crazy.
Right, and I think what's really cool about it, and we noticed this, one of our first customers was a dentist in Mississippi. And he called us, and this was when we were still a consulting company and we had Engineered. And we actually lost the consulting job to a good customer and friend up in Seattle, but we got the hosting part of it. Apparently, so it used to be that a bad day in the dental office was you hit a nerve, right? That was like the worst thing that could happen. Apparently now, they occasionally give people Novocaine and their heart stops or their kidney fails because of other pharmacological substances in their bodies and that sort of thing. So he had a chemistry background as part of probably his doctoral training for whatever, and he was able to put together an application. Like he knew, and I think he had an Excel model built that you could say this drug and this, and are there interactions?
Yeah.
Okay, and based on some chemical thing. Like I'm not a chemistry guy.
Yep.
And so it was formulaic is the point. It wasn't just a matching database. And so he created an application, or he had somebody else in Seattle create this application where dental offices could pay a few bucks a month, and before they gave their customers Novocaine or whatever drug of choice it was at that day, they could say, hey, what are you taking? Put them all in and say, okay, we're good. Like we're not going to have to call 911 anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that businesses are now driving the web app development rather than tech.
Yeah.
Right? And tech business people like myself and Lance and that sort of thing, that's maybe an even more effective combination, or certainly as effective, but it's not just the tech guys anymore. And that's the people who are calling us now saying, hey, I'm a business guy, I've got a great business idea for a web app, I think, but I have no idea how to get it done.
No, it's true. We're seeing the same thing where businesses are calling it for our internet expertise, not necessarily to be a hosting company anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a hosting. That's not a hosting
Not at all.
conversation.
Yeah.
It's like I have an app, I know what to do to build it, but I need help building it.
Like I kind of understand what I need, but I have no idea how to turn the crank.
Yeah.
And so I really see a lot of that, right? And again, the focus on the business and all of that makes it very exciting, because I think this is much more sustainable than the late 90s.
Yeah. Since Twitter's right down the street, they used Ruby on Rails, and it seemed like they were down all the time. Now they're still down all the time. And did that change how Ruby on Rails is perceived in the world?
So we founded Engineered on the basis of pretty heavy web scale experience from the late 90s. And I was willing to basically bet my life on the fact that Rails would scale, because technically I knew that it would. The Rails front end is a shared nothing architecture, and it's going to scale as well as any other language that relies on a SQL database backend, which is no longer a requirement in basically anything, but almost everybody uses them for development. And I knew from back in the day that the SQL database was always the first scaling bottleneck. Yeah. And I knew that Rails wasn't going to substantially alter that. So, that's why we put down the stake and said, look, Rails scalability isn't an issue. And we told early customers, Rails is less efficient than many other languages, and so it's probably going to cost more at a certain scale, because it's not C.
Where do you see the industry going? Where do you see engineering going? And I'd love to know product, when we...
Sure.
Location services are huge, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that I see very excitingly coming up and a lot of our customers participating in is finally, I think we're going to get to the level of software reuse via APIs.
Yeah.
And I love that, to give a nod to my co-founder, like Chargeify just handles recurring billing and credit cards and all of that. So it's so much, like that was code that, it was literally reinventing the wheel. Like every company that started a web service had to figure out how to pay for it or how to charge their customers for it.
Yeah.
So now you just plug into them and it's done. And you plug into Engine Yard and your app's up and running in a few minutes and it's scalable. And all of these services are building up around, if you need, you can talk to Simple Geo or Geo API or whichever one Twitter didn't buy. And bang, you're in the location business and you can work at the idea level rather than at the technical level. Yeah. And so we see these apps, we have developers that are putting out more than one app a month.
Yeah.
Just bang, bang, bang. And if you look at them, the initial reaction is, wow, they must be trivial. Yeah. But I'd say anything but, because they're building on the shoulders of giants.
Now, Plancast just announced an API. They're a block away from you guys, and they just announced an API today, right? So now you can put a schedule of events in, and there's all sorts of different location guys, not just Foursquare, but guys who have offers. They have an API. You can plug that in. You can plug in.
But the other thing that happened was when we came in, like when I came in here, a lot of people told me, well, the web's really dead because native apps is where it's at. Like that's going to be the next big thing. And what we're seeing right now, and I think a lot of like my friends in the neighborhood sort of reaffirm that, is I think they're at the cusp of a new sort of age of web apps, right? With HTML5, with sort of offline access, geolocation, everything basically being provided by the browser.
Yeah.
What we'll see, I think, is a whole new class of apps. And when you augment that with the kind of web services that Tom is talking about, there'll be things that are going to be there in the browser that aren't possible natively right now. And I think that's sort of a very exciting part for Rails, right? It's a good future for us to have.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about it.
Do you have any product that aims at this new real-time location world?
I mean, fortunately for us, Rails is at the tip of the spear. I mean, if you want to talk about tip of the spear, it really, to me, feels like the Ruby community's there. So Rails 3 has all kinds of...
Django's not going to disrupt it and take it away?
It's been threatening for a long time.
What kind of religious wars do you guys have in the office?
If a customer builds part of their app in Rails and part in Django, we're happy to host the Rails part, right?
Yeah.
So it's all good. It's all HTTP, and that's fine with us.
Yeah.
I think developers really need to be very, very careful, again, with these cost-benefit analyses. I see a lot of kind of charts, and people say, well, look, for this much power, if I do it on Amazon, it's going to cost this much, and if I do it myself, it's going to cost this much. And it's usually, I mean, if you're Twitter, let your CFO do that, right? Go for it. But the thing is, I mean, people are talking about, I just really see them as seeing this wrong. It's like you don't know enough when you're starting development of your app to even go there.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to Eric Ries talk? No. He does lean startups. He said the worst thing he ever did was spend 6 months building an app, put it up on a web page, and nobody clicked download. Right. Nobody clicked try it out. And he said I should have just made a web page that said try it out and see if anybody would click on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't know what the shape of your hardware is, and you don't need the commitments and. The other thing that these charts never show is they always assume that the cost of cloud resources are going to be a fixed rate in the future. Yeah. Whereas if you look slightly in the past, it's clear that they're already coming down very aggressively. Like this is going to be the definition of a commodity market, except it's going to be like if corn production were growing exponentially, which has probably never been the case.
No, I mean, our past sponsor, Seagate, right? And we just saw them. They're making 3 terabyte hard drives now for the same price as a terabyte drive cost a year ago, right? So, come on, baby. These prices are coming down. Whether we want to, even if we cut the margins the same, right? The prices are coming down because the hardware's coming down, the bandwidth is coming down, and this number of services around the world that are using these is going up, so we can put more on a box,
and
right?
Thank you, Intel.
Yeah.
Right, and the network vendors and everything. I mean, we're truly. I mean, I think we're well past the age of just ridiculous amounts of compute power available for incredibly small amounts of money. And the key thing is focusing on your customers and not on all the nastiness of how to plug them in and all that. The time for that is when you're really big and you've got people measuring your percentages and all of that. Like when other people care more about your business model than you do, that's when you need to go there. And that's, for most companies, that's years away, even if you're super successful.
Yeah. It's all about getting in front of your customers as soon as possible.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's what we want to do, right? We want to have our clients come in and build and deploy and happen under a day, and have customers hit it, have customers use it and give feedback and have them iterate.
Yeah.
And
Well, now you're preaching the same. That's why I came and saw you, because you're preaching the same religion we are at Rackspace. So
Speed. I mean, speed kills. I mean, my mother told me that when I was like 8, when I watched Vanishing Point, right? Which was, I mean, both the drugs and the cars. She was all over it. But it's true today. I mean, like, development speed trumps everything else. If you're out in front of your competitors, you're going to crush them like a bug, and that's what the cloud brings.
Right. So can you tell me a little bit about the fundamentals? How are you guys funded? You mentioned you were funded, but you know,
Yeah, so
and
we were.
what's happening in your business?
Sure. So business is great, growing very quickly. All kind of fundamental metrics are headed in the right direction, so on and so forth. We've raised money through 3 rounds, starting with Benchmark, then Amazon and NEA, and now DAG Ventures and a couple of others. And from my experience, and this is kind of antithetical in the Rails world, DHH, the creator of Rails, is very anti-VC. And I can both agree and disagree with him.
Yeah, he's written several famous blog posts about that.
I mean, there's no question that if you can manage it yourself, that you should, I think. In our case, we really felt that, one, we didn't have the skill to do it ourselves in terms of business. We knew Lance and I had a fair amount of business experience, more than most of, I think, our customers do, frankly. And it was clear to us very early on that this was a horse of a different color and that we needed more skill than we had. And so there was the money, which is good, but frankly, the partnership was better. I mean, you know, picking our Benchmark as our first round investor was more about what they could bring to the business than just the money.
No, that's true. When people are talking about venture capital, that's when they're having a good experience, that's what they say. You know, I hear a lot of people are going with Google Ventures for the same reason. They just get great mentoring, or even at a lower level, you know, Y Combinator or Techstars, they get mentoring, they get plugged into a network, and they get business help.
I talked to a customer and they were talking about Y Combinator, and they said, it seems very expensive to me. And I thought, what? It's like, you know, it's like you'd pay that much for 1 hour of his time. Like, you know, if I could sit down with Paul Graham, I'd give him 8% of Engine Yard or whatever he asked for. You know, I mean,
Don't tell him that.
Yeah.
He'll take you up on the deal.
Well, back then I would have, that's for sure. Not today, I'm not so sure. But I'd love to meet you, Paul, if you're around. But yeah, I mean, there's no, in my experience, I don't believe Engine Yard would be what it was without our VC partners. And I'm sure if Engine Yard had gone poorly or we didn't get along or whatever, I might have one of these negative stories that I hear so much about. But I will say this, it came down to the people and not the money. You know, and I'm incredibly happy we made that decision, knowing how things work now, because as far as I'm concerned, Benchmark is the best, and the rest of our guys are right in line with that too.
Very cool. Where do I learn more about you guys? EngineYard.com.
EngineYard.com.
Great. And thanks for coming on, and thanks for having me over.
Yeah, it's great to meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you.